China is producing the first Jewish medal. The Shanghai Mint has struck a limited edition series of Shanghai Memories silver and gold medals to commemorate the 70th anniversary of establishing the designated area for stateless refugees, also known as the Shanghai Ghetto. It became the home of an estimated 18,000 Jewish refugees who safely escaped from the Nazis during the Holocaust in World War II. We'll join Professor Steve Hochstadt, Manli Ho and Danny Spungen following these messages. Shanghai Ghetto survivors from all over the United States will receive a medal at this memory dinner event here in Chicago and share their stories. Special guests include Zhao Weiping, Consul-General of the People's Republic of China to Chicago, and Manli Ho, the daughter of Dr. Feng-Shan Ho, who was the Chinese Consul-General in Vienna. From 1938 to 1940, he issued thousands of visas to Jews, thereby granting safe passage out of Austria and often from concentration camps. Dr. Ho received the title of Righteous Among the Nations, Israel's highest award for his humanitarian courage in saving Jews from the Holocaust.
About 16,000 German, Austrian, and Czech Jews escaped to Shanghai between late 1938 and 1941. Later, about 2,000 Polish and Lithuanian Jews escaped across the Trans-Siberian Railroad and ended up in Shanghai. As the U.S. and Britain and everybody else closed their doors to immigrants, Jewish immigrants, Shanghai began to look like a good choice because there were no passport controls at all.
I'm very honored to join this special event today. Especially, I think we are here to remember a very great Chinese Consul-General, Dr. Feng-Shan Ho. He helped tens of thousands of Jewish people escape from Nazi persecution back in the 1930s, and so I think by doing that he has contributed a most touching part to the friendship between the Chinese and Jewish people. So I'm very proud of him, and that's why I'm here today. And I think the Chinese and Jewish people, we both endure immeasurable pain and suffering in before and during the Second World War. So the Chinese people fully understand the feeling of the Jewish people about those dark years.
I'm very privileged to be here to share the story of my father because he represents, in my mind, the best of the Chinese people. And he displayed that by helping save countless lives.
Judy Carroll, Stephen Law, Gary Mastoff, Annie Roding, Alice Scherf.
The design of the gold and silver medals is filled with symbolism relating to the humanitarian efforts by China to offer safe refuge to those who fled Europe starting in the 1930s. The image of a little girl represents a young Jewish refugee. The panda she's holding is a symbol of China, and the woman with the umbrella is symbolic of China offering kindness in sheltering the refugees. Mr. Danny Spungen arranged this dinner. Please tell us why.
Well, I found out when I teach and exhibit the Holocaust, I realized that when people think of the Holocaust, they only think of the European stage. And in fact, besides 6 million Jews being murdered during the Holocaust, 60 to 65 million people were killed and murdered throughout the world stage. So the breakdown in humanity was really all over the world. So I found a little piece of interesting story about 18,000 Jewish Europeans, mostly German Austrians and a couple thousand Polish, found refuge in Shanghai. And it was such an interesting story. I met some survivors of the Shanghai Ghetto, refugees, whatever you want to call them. And the fact is, I started really getting my whole exhibit translated into Chinese. And I've been there now 3 times exhibiting at Nanjing University, Shanghai Finance University, Lutheran School. And I found it very interesting. It's a really interesting piece of history. So I found 16 survivors. I found 13, but yesterday we found 3 more. So we found 16 refugees from the Shanghai Ghetto, and we gathered them here in Chicago for a major coin show. And the timing was perfect. It was b'sheret. It was luck. In December 7th, 2010, I was at the Shanghai Mint having lunch. I got lucky and fortunate enough to be there. And one of the directors, one of probably many of them, said, you know, I like what you're doing with the Holocaust education. I actually know a little bit about the Shanghai Ghetto. And you know something? We're going to make the first numismatic piece. The first numismatic piece made in any Chinese mint. So that started off the process. And in May of this year, 2013, the 70th anniversary of the establishment of this designated area for stateless refugees, commonly called the Shanghai Ghetto, we help manufacture, produce, and distribute these medals. And it's the first time in China history any mint created or allowed to have been produced a medal, any piece commemorating a Jewish event. So the medal's amazing. There's a piece of mezuzah on the door. The address is 1943 on the door. There's a poster of a visa representing Dr. Ho, a very famous righteous person. There's a ship in the back, imprinted with the name of, what's the name of that? Bianca Mano. And it's just an incredible, incredible piece of history that we created. And it's just amazing. And anybody with a panda, please welcome them, open arms. They like to be hugged, right? They want to be hugged. These 18,000 refugees from Shanghai, they survived. Most of them lost a majority of their families who said, why go to Shanghai? We'll find another way. And the way they found, unfortunately, was through the concentration camp and killing centers. So it's an honor to have you, and in memory of your family, it's a blessing.
With us now is Michaellechypical. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to have you with us, sir.
Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about your business.
My business is primarily an investment coin business. We specialize in high-value, high-target coins that are significant because of their condition and their rarity. So we started a company primarily based on the idea of creating investment opportunities for individuals who are looking to diversify their portfolio into luxury goods. It's very much in the same vein of arts and wine as an investment. We do primarily coins. So we're looking at coins that are high target acquisitions for vintage rarity and high condition. So we're looking for coins that have a lot of spectacular stories behind them and a lot of coins that have spectacular conditions. So coins from very, very long time ago that have been maintained very, very well.
Michael, this is very interesting. It so happens that we're here at this event discussing the new release of this first medal minted by China honoring Jews. Tell us a little bit of your interest in Jewish heritage.
Believe it or not, I got involved based on principle, not on financial interest. Danny Spungen, the gentleman who's interested or involved with this project, has actually been a personal business mentor of mine for a number of years. I'm actually a Chinese man who speaks a little bit of a Hebrew, who knows my Shema, who recognizes the same God that Israel recognizes, and it hit home for me. It hit home for me. This is me on a coin. It's a symbolic piece of history that literally captures me in essence and spirit and everything. My company got involved initially largely because of the principle behind it, but it's been a blessing to see how well it's doing financially. One of the core values of my company was to be able to put investments in the hands of the people. A lot of times I've seen many people lose their blood, sweat, and tears money on really poor financial decisions and putting money in stocks, coins, art that they shouldn't. And the opportunity to do this and to promote an item that's coming out of the China Mint with such significance to me, that is also a very rare item that is highly desired in the numismatic community, has just been a huge blessing.
Please tell us specifically about this medal.
The medal itself is the first numismatic piece, like you said, coming out of the China Mint that has a Jewish theme. It's actually a series of firsts. It's the first Chinese piece that has each coin etched with the number identifying its place in the production. So each coin has a number that says this is 1 of 36, 2 of 36, 3 of 36. Also, the mintages of these individual coins is significantly lower than anything else coming out of China right now.
Michael, please explain to our audience the significance of such a low number.
Well, in the numismatic community, rarity is an important factor in determining the worth of an individual item. Not only is demand necessary, supply is also necessary in identifying what the price point for the coin is going to be. So with this medal, we have a limited supply, a much more limited supply, and we actually have a much larger supply base, or much larger demand base. Not only is the Chinese public interested in it, the Jewish public is also very interested in this medal for obvious reasons.
I'm personally quite moved by the events that took place here today with these survivors and, of course, the presentation of this unique medal. How can people obtain it?
If anyone in the audience is interested in acquiring the medal, they can contact me directly and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Michael, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you for explaining about this wonderful medal. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
I just caught up with Steve Hochstadt and Manli Ho. I hate to interrupt your conversation. Richard Peritz. Steve,
Richard.
Good to see you again. We are on camera, and I'm doing this to you right here in the lobby of the Hyatt before the dinner event tonight. I'd like just to ask you, please, if you don't mind, what is the significance of this dinner tonight?
The significance of this dinner for me is that I get to come and hear Professor Steve Hochstadt talk about the research that he has done over the past 20 years interviewing Shanghai survivors, because that is a topic that I am very interested in as well because of the connection with my father.
For me, this is a great opportunity to talk both to some former refugees and then to some other people who don't know much about this story, and to try to bring them the essence of this story.
Please tell us more about the wonderful work your father did.
My father was a Chinese diplomat who was stationed in Vienna, Austria, and he was an eyewitness to both the Anschluss and Kristallnacht in 1938. He responded to the plight of Jewish refugees at that time by issuing them visas to Shanghai, China. Now, the interesting thing about that is that he basically had no country. His country had been occupied by the Japanese, so no entry document that he issued would be recognized by the Japanese. He decided to issue the visas instead by essentially turning the entry visas on their head so that they could be used by the refugees to exit, to escape from Austria, and also to facilitate their finding other destinations to go to, because as long as they had a destination on the visa, other countries would issue them passage. and therefore there were refugees who hopscotched their way to the West. The other thing about the Shanghai visas is, especially after Kristallnacht, it was very useful to get people who were arrested and deported to the concentration camps of Dachau and Buchenwald released, because they were used as proof of emigration, which the Nazis demanded.
Manli, this is really fascinating. Steve, what would you like to add to this? I know that your family escaped from Austria.
Manli's father was at the beginning of this story, helping Jews leave the Third Reich. It wasn't just a coincidence, though, that he was Chinese, because the Jews who ended up in Shanghai soon figured out that there was no anti-Semitism in China, that the Chinese people had no idea that Jewish white people were somehow worse than Christian white people or any different. And so the Jews who got to China, who got to Shanghai, were able to feel safe for the first time for them in many years. And not only could they feel safe about the Chinese, they could also feel safe about the Japanese who had taken over Shanghai and after Pearl Harbor took over completely the city. But the Japanese did not attack the Jews. They didn't brutalize them, they didn't beat them up, they didn't arrest them, they let them live. So all these Jews who got to Shanghai were able to survive, unlike Jews who were left, often their own relatives, who were left in Europe.
This is really fascinating. Manli, back to you. Your father is actually one of the really important rare heroes. Tell us more about your father.
My father was a poor boy who was born in rural China. And because of, I think, he and his family being rescued when he was young, he lost his father at age 7. And his widowed mother and he and his sister were rescued by some Norwegian missionaries who had set up a compound in his hometown. And he went through their schools, and he always felt that he had received a bounty of gifts from God, essentially. And he felt that they were not for his personal use, but that he had to give back. And therefore, I think that when he was faced with the plight of the Jews in Austria, and of course he knew about Germany, he felt impelled to extend a hand and to help them. The only thing, he did not talk about his rescue activities during his lifetime. I have had to basically dig around. I mean, I have to find pebbles in an ocean is what I like to call it. And I've been doing this for now nearly 16 years. But I think the only thing my father left in terms of a comment was he said, when I saw the tragic plight of the Jews, it was only natural to feel compassion and to want to help. And from a humanitarian standpoint, that is what one ought to do.
My grandmother, who I knew, of course, as an older woman, was instrumental in getting my family out of Vienna, really by her own efforts. She used relatives, she used money, she used connections that she made to get my father a visa to the United States, which was very difficult. He was 18 years old. He was the only one of his family that she could get a visa for to the United States. And then to get herself and her husband, my grandfather, who was in jail, the Nazis had put him in jail, get him out of jail and get them to Shanghai and get their daughter, who was only 13, on the kinder transport to England. So my grandmother did all this, got the whole family out, and really saved them all by her own efforts.
It's so very important for people to appreciate and understand the truth of this history. In fact, I understand, Manli, that your father helped so many people, and one of the survivors you just met here in the Hyatt Hotel about to attend this event. Tell us about that.
Yes, I was extremely excited to have met Ellie Grass, who was from Vienna, and she was a child, and she and her mother and her brother got a visa from my father's consulate and escaped to Shanghai. Her father, unfortunately, escaped elsewhere and eventually died on the Russian front.
Yeah, I would like to add one frustrating thing for both Manli and me is we talked to people who were children. Why did this woman's family go to the Chinese consulate? How did they organize that? What was their relationship with her father, Consul Ho? We won't be able to find that out because we're talking to people who were 7 or 8 or 10 or 2 years old at the time. So we have to make some guesses about what the adults were doing.
I too would like to add something. Of the original survivors, in other words, the people who themselves went to the Chinese consulate and got the visas, one of the first survivors I found was Eric Goldstaub, who was 17 years old and who went to 50 different consulates in Vienna before he ended up at my father's consulate, and he got 20 visas. So I consider myself extremely lucky to have found Eric and to have talked to him and gotten his story before he passed away 2 years ago at age 90.
I'd like to ask you, Steve, what is the importance in keeping the remembrance of the Holocaust alive? Why is this important?
Some people think there are lessons from the Holocaust. I think the lessons are so obvious that you don't even need to say them. So the value for me of teaching about the Holocaust and having people learn about it is that I think it changes you when you learn about the horrible things that some people did, but also the wonderful things that other people did. And it isn't like you've learned a lesson, but I think people's thinking shifts a little bit, and that's really the most we can hope for.
When I was doing this research on my father, after he passed away, I often think of William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar and Mark Antony's speech, in which he says, "The evil that men do live after them, the good is often interred with their bones." And so I always think that if I or Steve hadn't pursued this history, it would be lost forever. And that would be a real shame, because that was the good that men do. And the survivors' histories and stories are really incredible.
Absolutely. Steve, may I just end with you and ask you, what is the significance of this event tonight from your perspective?
I'm really glad that Danny Spungen decided to bring us together, Manli, myself, some of the former refugees, other people, to keep this memory alive. It gives us a chance to gather a little bit more information, and it also puts the story out again for a few more people to think about.
Well, this has been a real great pleasure. Thank you again, Steve.
Thank you, Richard.
Manli, an honor. Thank you so much.
Honor is mine.
Has the world learned the lesson? Sadly, I must confess, the answer is no. Had the world learned the lesson, there would have been no Cambodia, and no Rwanda, and no Darfur, and no Bosnia, and no racism, and no anti-Semitism. But we must learn now certain very simple lessons, that whatever happens to one community affects all communities.
These words, so eloquently spoken by Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, at the opening of the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center are a mandate for the work that occurs inside these walls every day. Hello, I'm Lauren Jiggets, and last summer my mother's sister and I visited this remarkable museum for the first time. And I'm sure, like many of you, I left with memories and impressions that will stay with me for a lifetime. So please join me as we explore this vital institution and meet some of the many individuals that are impacted by its essential mission.
One of my students actually today said that every single CPS student should come to the museum every year and be reminded of what happened and what they can do to prevent this from ever happening again. I think it's extremely important that students understand that as an individual they have the power to change the environment that they live in and their communities.
Younger children begin their journey with a visit to the newly enhanced Make a Difference Miller Family Youth Exhibition. Through new interactive scenarios, students learn how to become upstanders, not bystanders, by choosing to speak up and take action. Each visitor has the chance to take an upstander oath, a pledge to take the lessons of respect learned at the museum and apply them to their own lives.
I've had a lifelong feeling that children are not born with hate, they learn it. And the object of this and many other things that are going on are to try and teach the kids that they don't have to hate differences in other kids. Tall, short, thin, fat, white, black. These are differences we should build on and not differences we should fear. Talking to kids and understanding that they understand what bullying is and what upstanders are. That's where I really get the pride, knowing that the message is getting through.
You never can know the impact and the consequences of a word, an image, a sentence, a prayer, or a smile.
This brings us to the end of our special show for today. I'm Maya Peritz. Thank you for being with us.